Hi, welcome to Bipolar Afterthoughts, and this is a trigger warning as this video will be discussing SA, substance abuse, and self-harm. So if that triggers you, go ahead and click away, but this is part 2 to a tell-all featuring who it features. And as you know, Trey raped me and molested me from a very young age. You've heard it even through the phone from my mom admitting it, that she knows that it happened. You've heard it from Alyssa, from Bella, from Kevin, from Kai. You've heard it from everyone. And and yeah, he did really horrible things to me and brainwashed me and tortured me and all that kind of stuff.
It trained me to be like this, so maybe I can be trained out of it.
And now he views me as his number one enemy and he wants to kill me. And he's 9 years older than me, by the way, for context. And so having to see him every single day and sleep under the same roof as him was very difficult, even when I had people over. Like, Kevin was always over, and you were over quite a bit, and then same with Alyssa. But
Yeah, I heard him more than I really saw him because we were just always in your room, which was mainly the safe haven of the house, pretty much.
which wasn't even that safe, as evidenced by that window story. Yeah. But then, so as you mentioned, I moved out when I was 19 with Kevin, with someone else, into this 3-bedroom apartment. Not very far away from where I was, about, how many minutes of drive was that? Like 10, 15?
Less than 10.
Yeah. But still, that's when you and I reconnected. And how did the darkness feel then?
It was better. There were still,
You can say whatever.
I guess, fragments. There were still there, but it wasn't that house.
Yeah. And just so you know, you're not the only one who talks about that house being so dark. Yeah. A lot of people, there was an incident where all my friends couldn't come to my house if Trey was there, because everyone kind of had heard about him. His arrest record is super, super, super long, about like 4 or 5 pages if you scroll on the criminal website where you can find people's records. Anyway, yeah, so my friends weren't allowed at my house if he were there, was to be there. And my mom he was in jail, and so they were allowed finally after a couple months to come back to the house, and then my mom decided to bail him out without telling me. He came back and taunted the fact that I couldn't have any friends in the house. And there are multiple other things, more specific details that I am not talking about, that you know about, that you've heard about. But it did influence how I reacted later in life, because, as mentioned, I did believe that to be normal. I believed that kind of behavior, not what Trey was doing, but the fighting, the coping mechanisms that I saw. My mom is a meth addict, and Trey, all the drugs, and my dad an alcoholic, and Trey an alcoholic, and my mom an alcoholic, although she doesn't drink now. So there's that for her. So yeah, I just learned these coping mechanisms, and one of the coping mechanisms I unfortunately leaned into when I was really young, like 13, and so did Alyssa, and so did Bella, was cutting. And when you moved into that house with me, in not that long after I moved in, really.
A few months.
A few months, yeah. Actually, now I'm thinking about it.
I think it was longer than a few months, but yeah.
Yeah, because we had another kind of blow up where you were like, I don't know if I like your energy type thing. I was going through a really rough time. Trey had just raped me again. And I was cutting and drinking a lot, not nearly as much as I did in 2020 or 2021. But
also, when you drank back then, you were still more of a either goofy drunk or just more sad.
Right. Yeah. Instead of what I became, which was always either sad or just like out of it. I mean, I never really got to the point where I was trying to, like, I wasn't throwing punches at you, exactly. So.
And it wasn't like you were even doing it, getting drunk every day kind of thing.
Yeah, back then in the house before you moved in. Because it continued afterwards, of course, too, because then he raped me again a few months after, because that time we only stopped being friends for like 2 or 3 months. I think it was even 2 months. And then he raped me again after, because I went back to the house for my dad's health, and it's complicated, but it happened, and it's fucked me up even more. But so yeah, when we had that blow up, you said, "Oh, I don't know if I like your energy, the things you bring to the table," essentially. But we later found out it was, and I'm not going to say the real reason, but we later found out it was due to a different reason that had a lot more to do with you and what you were kind of figuring out with your own life as to why you decided to walk away, if I have that correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I have that correct, but I just... So, yeah, and then afterwards, when you came back into my life again, I was good, and I had... I mean, how would you describe my energy when when we went to go see Red Sparrow, for example, and then you came and moved in, and that kind of stuff?
I'd say you were more composed by then.
Because at this point, I'd filed for divorce from Kevin, finally.
The mustache is gone.
And I wasn't cutting, hadn't been for a few months. I was, in a new relationship with Kai, and I was doing a lot better, really.
That's what I was just going to say, too. It did seem like you were doing a lot better.
And then it happened again with Trey. And then Kai had a lot of toxicity, too, to him. Why don't you talk about some of the things you witnessed with Kai? Go ahead. You can say anything. From my end, his end, whatever. Anything random, it doesn't matter. Should I put dramatic music here? I think I should.
Maybe the Jeopardy music.
Yeah.
I was when I first heard you talking about him, I was more concerned of your mental state at the time, of how quickly things were moving with him, and then turned into him learning that he was abusing certain drugs and
not meth or heroin.
No.
Just gotta clarify that.
But enough to make his judgment not exactly there. There was some warnings and some ignoring of those warnings. But luckily he has grown a lot from that.
He has. But at that time he used to yell a lot, manipulate a lot. Luckily not really ever cheat. He lied at certain times, stole my medication one time. That really pissed me off. You remember that, right? I was listening under your door, and I was like, I think that motherfucker is high, and I didn't know on what, and I came out, and I was like, so what are you high on? I heard everything, because he was talking to I'm just gonna say her real name. He was talking to Sam. on FaceTime, and I could hear him saying, I heard her say, how does it make you feel? And he was like, oh, it makes me feel blah, blah, blah. And I just looked at you from underneath the door. I was like, that motherfucker is high. And you were just like playing a video game. You just stopped. You like looked at me. You're like, oh crap. And so yeah, I opened the door. I was like, Kai. He's like, yeah. I'm like, can we talk? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, great. I'll give you a second. I shut the door, and then remember he was like he sounded like nervous when I said Kai, because I said it that way. He was like, yeah. And then he walks to the door, and I'm like, what's in your pocket? And he takes out his phone, and Sam's still on there, and he's like, oh, that's weird. I'm like, are you for real? Like, you think I wouldn't notice that?
Wasn't exactly smart at hiding these things.
No, and I was just like, I heard everything. You might as well tell me. He's like, okay. I took one of your Klonopin, which I have for my anxiety. I was like, oh, you did you? And did Sam tell you to put in your pocket so that, you know, she could hear what I had to say? He's like, oh, no, she didn't. I'm like, tell me the fucking truth. And he was like, yeah, she did. And I was like, damn, you're high. And we got into a huge fight over that.
I do remember a bit of arguments in that house, yeah.
From him and I, yeah. Because we were toxic back then. Not physically, not lying, not cheating, but there was a lot of yelling, and it wasn't yelling like what I grew up learning, which was, fuck you, I hate you, I want you to die, you know. That's what I heard and
those
learned.
fights were on a couple more levels, but
yeah, these ones were just like, why are you being such a dick? Like stuff like that, which is still not healthy, and we fixed that, you know, towards state.
I remember actually a couple of times I would come in for certain topics and be like, okay, like, can I just try and be the mediator? And sometimes that would actually work for that day. Other times I'd just put on my headphones and continue playing games.
Yeah, because during that time, you were also going through your own stuff where you were depressed. But throughout all of that, somehow we still found a way to have a connection with one another that was deep and profound and unique. And I don't think we gave it this term until... I don't think it was until maybe towards the end of living at that house, or it could have been maybe even once I moved.
I think it was when you moved.
Yeah, and we were like, you know what it is? It's a cosmic connection. Like, we both came to that conclusion.
Because in our bones, we understand each other.
And we're like, yeah, we're like, where you felt I was the only person who truly understood you, and I felt like you were the only person who truly understands me. And that's kind of like, we're like, okay, yeah, that must be why we keep coming back to each other and relating to each other and telling each other all our deep, dark secrets, you know? But yeah, that's why, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what did you think of, like, before we gave it a name? Because it had been brought up a bit before. Like, this is weird, like, our connection, like, our friendship. It's weird. Like, what did you think of it before we actually termed a coined a term for it? COVID brain. I'm blaming it on COVID brain.
You said it right.
Repeat of the Jeopardy music.
Guess more of a just a curiosity. Like there was a poll that was there.
It's not there anymore.
We're talking about the past. So.
Okay, yeah. Whatever. We're in the past, I guess. So anyway. How did I treat you as a friend, really? I mean, throughout, you know, you can pick throughout any of that period between the house and the end of living in that town?
Generally, really well. There were just random disputes about roommate stuff, but
do you remember when you did the dishes? You did the dishes and you put in.
Yeah, okay. I had a migraine and I was not paying attention.
And what did you do?
I put in the wrong soap.
What kind of soap did you put in? Come on.
I put in dish soap.
Yeah, you did. And then
I was
we got
also
bubbles.
angry at you guys.
We got bubbles. Yeah, you were angry because we said that we should all take turns doing dishes, and you're like, no, everyone should just wash their own dish, and we're like, no, this is how we vote, like how we did it with our previous roommate, and you're like, fine.
I had like one dish and you guys had like 15, so I was like,
well, we were also 2 people and we ate more than you did. But anyway.
Just saying.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you. And I don't remember what the hell you were talking about. Oh, how we were friends.
Yeah.
How we were as friends. How I was to you.
Yeah, generally pretty good during that time. There were, I'd say, certain dark days that both of us could really get into.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because you've got depression. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
No.
Yeah. So he suffers with depression, and I have, do I even need to say it? Bipolar, and other, PTSD, anxiety, whatever. It's fun. It's really fun, isn't it? Isn't it great? Yeah. And so what there is something else to it as well. Because as you mentioned, once I moved out, I started to slowly realize when I'd go back and visit the house that the fighting was not normal.
There was a moment where it wasn't really slow exactly. There was a few months in when I remember, I think you called me and you're like, I now realize how it was going into that house without living in that house.
Mm-hmm. It seemed like a war zone, like a threat. It was threatening. It was like you could die, or like you could get hurt, or something. It was like a war zone.
I didn't generally think death of myself when I was there, just though some kind of injury of someone I was expecting one day.
Yeah, which happened actually a lot. Not the death part, but
Yeah.
Injury, severe injury at times.
Or cops getting called. And
which did happen.
Then getting mad that the cops were getting called.
Which happened. Yeah, my mom would tell my dad to call the cops. Usually not to call the cops. And then she would tell him to call the cops, and he would, and then she'd get mad at him for calling the cops. Really mad, like, fuck you, I don't ever want to see you again, you are worthless, you piece of shit. And, she loves to call me, when she's mad at me, a derogatory term for being gay, even though I'm bi. And worthless, wish I never had you.
She's even recently said a couple of those from what I remember.
Mm-hmm. Like on the phone. You've probably heard her on the phone saying some nice words of affirmation.
Even when she's trying to be nice, it's like a backhanded compliment at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She knew about the fact that Trey was raping and molesting me, and then later torturing me and brainwashing me, and she would buy me off with gifts. That's what she would do.
Would you like to make a talking bear?
This place is psychopathic.